working on the next month right away. So it's a continuous thing, which is the way I like to draw it, kind of like this. Does that make sense? Any questions thus far? So what have we said? We said that at the core, this thing we call S&OP is really a set of meetings. It's not more complicated than that. It's 4 or 5 meetings a month. Each meeting has its own view of the plan and its own scorecard. Each meeting has an executive level sponsor, somebody like a vice president, and each meeting typically has more like what I like to call a doer or a facilitator. Pulls the report together, pulls the scorecard together, makes the agenda, runs the meeting. But in the background, there's an executive that's supporting this and is accountable for the results of the plan. So here, you might have marketing. The vice president of marketing might sponsor this meeting. You might have a product manager that's running the meeting over here. Here, you might have a demand manager that's running the meeting, vice president of sales sponsoring the meeting. Here, you may have a production supply planner that's running the meeting, looking out at the supply plan, 12, 18 months, 24 months, that sort of time frame. And you have a vice president of operations that's sponsoring the meeting. Attending the meeting, not saying a lot, but weighing in when an executive needs to. Okay? And these sponsors, these components, these guys all sit up here. Okay? They bring what they learned here, and they're aware, so that by the time any issue bubbles up to this level, they're not surprised by it. And you may have a supply chain director that is coordinating all of this, running the pre-S&OP, creating an agenda, aware of all of the imbalances and problems, aware of what can be solved here, and driving that solution at this level, but also in touch with this team and giving them a heads up about what may be coming for executive S&OP. And then there's a sponsor here as well, right? That's making sure his or her management staff is sponsoring this and driving this whole process, worried about that stuff I wrote about earlier, but also making sure that the internal coordination within the company is going on. That might be a COO, president, managing director, maybe a CFO. I was going to talk about that a little bit later. That's a good one too. Okay? Does that make sense? It's really executive sponsored, next level down, run, coordination of 4 or 5 meetings in a sequence on a monthly basis. Does that make sense? The pace of how I'm speaking, is it okay? Too fast, too slow? Good?
It's good.
Good, okay, thank you. Okay, so now we have an idea of what this is. How can we use this to drive growth? Right, that's kind of the theme of what I'm supposed to be talking about. Okay, well, some of these best practices also good for growth, right? Define accountabilities, improve communication, improve teamwork, understanding of other functions, optimize the whole, KPI performance management, scenario management. This is one of my favorite things. Well, we don't know what to do. Okay, let's do a business case on it. Let's figure out, we could go A or we could go B. We could enter this market or we could not. We could enter, these new products. We could kill them. We could build a new plant or we could outsource. Any of these type of scenarios, you manage them, decide upon them, and report on them through S&OP. Sharing best practices across divisions. Okay, well, Division A is doing S&OP pretty well. Well, Division B doesn't really do that. Well, why not? Okay, maybe let's help business unit A help business unit B. These things are going to help drive growth. So, I mean, growth, it'd be nice to have the next killer product or blockbuster drug or killer app, all these terms. So S&OP doesn't do that, right? But it gives you the framework to take advantage of your opportunities in the best way that your team is able to do. And make sure you have the right conversations with the right people in the room at the right time with the right KPIs. It's the framework or the basis for being able to drive these type of discussions. That produce the growth. I got one slide on, we've just updated our maturity model on S&OP. And I wanted to include that here, just to give you a basic idea of some characteristics associated with, good S&OP, developing S&OP, and, rock star S&OP. So if you're not doing S&OP, you're basically, you kind of live in month to month. Maybe you're just responding to orders. Update the plans when somebody feels like it. Shorter planning horizon, this month type things. Decisions are made informally by the loudest voice in the room as opposed to based on rational data and coordinated input across functions. So some companies will say, oh yeah, we get together and we have some kind of a meeting, and yeah, that's not S&OP. Basic S&OP would be things like, okay, well, we've got those components that we just discussed. We've got roles in place, we've got a team, we've got a demand manager, we have a supply manager, we have a director that's leading a pre-S&OP. So that I would call basic. We've got KPI scorecards, that's pretty good. And we want to start there. And what we do with our clients is we build a maturity path for them and measure it over several months. Okay, so functional, basic components, but functional, we're getting a little bit better, right? We're talking only about the exceptions, not everything. We don't want to sit in meetings all day. Speaking about meetings, sometimes we implement S&OP, people say, we got enough meetings. Really? We're going to add 4 more meetings or 5 more meetings, and I have 3 divisions where we need to do this since we're going to, my people are going to be tied up. They're 15 or 20 minutes meetings across. I don't have time for that. I can't have that. They need to work. But what this does is it actually eliminates all the ad hoc meetings that go on, or the email traffic that's inefficient, and having duplicate meetings because, the right person that needed to make the decision wasn't there. Oh, okay, well, let's meet again on Thursday, when Ellie gets back from vacation and she needs to make the decision on this. So it actually, in the long run, is going to eliminate all that kind of inefficient meetings, if you will. So it doesn't really add. In the beginning, it seems like it does. Okay, so we're talking about functional. So yeah, S&OP is actually the process that's used for making decisions. It's not like, oh yeah, we got together at the bar, and what we decided was we're going to introduce this product. And then, maybe we told somebody about that in time, maybe we didn't. But we're actually using the process to make decisions. In fact, one of the things we always look for is things that are going on in the company that should be brought into S&OP. And when we hear of that topic being talked about, we're like, that's a great topic to not have an ad hoc meeting on tomorrow, but we're going to wait just 1 week and bring that into the S&OP meeting. And we look for our sponsors to enforce that. We look for our supply chain or S&OP lead to help ferret some of that stuff out and make sure those agendas are in the right places. So we make the decisions using the process. Okay, then maybe we get a little better. We're starting to maybe use a little bit more IT automation. Maybe we got manual reports here. We're pulling stuff out of ERP systems on spreadsheets. Over here, there's an automated tool. There's more scenario management. Our KPI management's better. We're focusing on root causes and KPIs. And here, we're We're even at a higher level of maturity. We're getting better at scenario analysis. We have a broad understanding of what needs to be done in pre-SNOP versus what needs to be done in executive SNOP. We are extending the planning horizon out a little bit more. Okay, we started at 12 months, now we're doing 24. Some companies even do 36. It's driven by supply chain planning, right? Our longest lead time item for supply chain planning, right? What we need for financial planning integration, and what we need to decide on in terms of a time frame for our SNOP level scope. How long does it need to take to do a capital expansion? How long does it take to add a shift or to drop a shift? These sort of things determine your SNOP time horizon. Typically 12 to 24 months for most companies. I've done it before with companies that insisted on doing only 3 months. Raw materials was hooked up via a pipe to a chemical plant, and they shut it on, shut it off. There wasn't really any lead time. That was fine for them. They didn't get the financial integration piece, right? Because you still had finance that needed to do projections out to the end of the fiscal year. Not a rolling plan, which is a mistake, but for them that was a big step for them. And that was a level 1, kind of level 2 maturity for them. Now, you know what? That's okay. That's a place to start. Come back a year later and challenge that question again. Try to get more of the financial integration. Okay, so if you're kind of over here on the left side, you're working basically on the fundamentals of SNOP. If you're over here, this is where you're going to drive growth. Okay, so that's the idea why I put this chart in. So if I go back to our little picture here, how are we going to drive growth with SNOP? Well, obviously, or the obvious thought is to jump to more of the commercially oriented meetings or components. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can drive growth in portfolio review. And again, I'm trying to give you something very specific. A couple of nuggets you can pull out of here. So the traditional types of topics that are talked about in portfolio review is, okay, let me look at my product portfolio. And has anyone heard of the BCG growth matrix? Where we're looking at, we're plotting our products on a 2x2 matrix, and we're looking at, on one axis, okay, what kind of market share do we have? And on the other side, we're looking at what's the growth potential. So it's like, okay, well, we got a high market share here. It's a pretty mature market, but we got a high share, so it's good. It's kind of our cash cow, right? That's what that model calls that quadrant. Or maybe we've got a high market share and high growth. Whoa, rising star. Or we've got, no share and no growth. Why are we doing that? Well, we're not. This one here, we got, okay, we don't have a lot of share, but a lot of opportunity. I don't know. Let's figure that one out. So, plotting your product portfolio will help you structure the right conversations. And your products move in quadrants, right, over their product life cycle. So that's would be a typical thing that would be done in portfolio review. And also new product introduction. Okay, we're going to bring in this new product line over this period of time. We got somebody from production in there. We got someone from finance in there. We got someone from marketing in there. I don't want to turn this into a project management review meeting, but at a higher level or for a real important one. And we can bring it in here. Some other things that companies are using based on our recent survey data. Portfolio review is one I like to study because it's kind of new. It's not as established as the others. It's a little, one company does this, one company does that. It's the one that's the most different across companies. So I'm always wondering what they're doing here. Sure, okay, 65% of the respondents are doing new product demand, great. New product introduction, product phase out. Okay, that's good that I saw that one because a lot of companies don't do product phase out at all. They just keep making the stuff, even if it's not profitable. Promotions management, some of this you can do in demand review too. It's always a little hazy whether to do it here or demand review. I don't care as long as it's done in the right place for that company and it's done. But and many of these people are managing promotions. Pricing, having pricing discussions. Here's one too, obsolete inventory. You wouldn't think that we would talk about obsolete inventory, and like, isn't that like an inventory thing? We talk about that in supply review. Well, who makes the decisions in the company about whether to move the product that we're losing shelf life on, or an old product through on a cheaper channel? The old sneakers that didn't sell too well, when are those going to the discount store as opposed to the Nike store at the fancy expensive mall? Who makes those kind of decisions? Typically, it's a commercial person, right? It's not somebody in operations. So, a lot of people are talking about obsolete inventory and managing that in a product portfolio review. Now, do you have to do it there? Could you have a separate meeting for that? Yeah, that's fine too. Doesn't have to be, but a lot of people are. Okay, new product sales, product profitability. Yeah, why don't we plot our products on something like this, and then let's have a review of the profitability of those items. 10 most profitable products, bottom most profitable products, and then when we see some with negative profitability, we can ask ourselves, why are we doing it? Now that's a great conversation to have in product portfolio review. Product management KPIs, I mentioned some, I'll show you some more in a minute. How are we going to distribute this? What kind of channels is it going to go through? Is it going to go direct? Are we going to ship it? Is it going to be drop shipped from our contract manufacturer? All this sort of stuff, right? Hey, there's an integration point with our supply review team. Maybe we ought to bring that one to pre-SNOP. There's only an infinite number of questions and combinations of things that can come up. And if we don't structure it some way, how's it get done? It gets done over email with between a couple people or a CC of a bunch of people with unclear accountability. Maybe it's too late. Maybe the right person didn't read the email. The ball gets dropped and we lose money. So it's not, one of my mentors, one of the founders of SNOP back in the 80s, and he's like 70 something now. So I know him pretty well. I haven't known him well enough to kind of ask how old he is. But I think he's got about 20 years on me, that's my guess. Anyway, he called this whole thing organized common sense, right? All of this stuff gets done in every company one way or the other. It's just a matter of how can we organize it? How can we be proactive? How can we get the accountabilities in place? How can we get a single plan around this? Organized. Okay. So these are some things that people are doing in product portfolio review. And specifically, what I'd recommend in terms of, say, I like to call it growth lever. Okay, portfolio review, use something like this BCG growth matrix that I mentioned. And have some level of management techniques that, decisions that you're going to make for products in each quadrant. Okay, bring in new product demand, aggressive profile, and so I talked about this being a monthly cycle. So below this, there's a weekly something that goes on, right, in companies. I said this wasn't tactical, it's typically monthly, but below this, it's what are we shipping this week? Okay, did the orders really come in? So that's a different thing, right? Both things are necessary. I'm not saying don't do the other one. I'm just saying that's not SNOP. A lot of companies will claim that, oh yeah, we're doing SNOP, we get together weekly. We talk about orders, so they're going to ship this week. Yeah, that's not SNOP. But what I might recommend is for new products, hey, why don't we do a mid-month check to see how we're doing on how that's rolling out. Okay, promotions management. Yeah, that drives growth, right? Sure, we take a bit of a hit on margin, but that's hopefully temporary, and we still get some margin, some growth. We want that on the calendar 6 to 12 months in advance, when we're going to have those kind of seasonal promotions maybe. And then measuring the lift to determine the effectiveness, right? Pricing reviews, what are competitors doing? Understanding price elasticity. Reviewing profitability, product margins. Hey, that went by fast. Okay. Yeah, so you know, top 10, bottom 10, this sort of thing. And some of these other things we talked about. In the interest of time, I'll move through it. Anyone comments, thoughts, other things you would add to our list? Other things that you've done in a portfolio review? Sorry? Okay. Just a few tools, scorecard, a plan. So in the class, we're going to go over like, okay, here's what the tool looks like. Here's a sample report. Here's a sample KPI scorecard. Here's like what I like to call a meeting charter for the meeting itself. We've got those for all the components of SNOP. I don't have time for that now. I just want to give you a flavor. These sort of KPIs that you can manage in product portfolio review. Okay? The other components you can drive growth too. It's not just this. You know, demand review, we can talk about some strategic things that are going on in the market, what competitors are doing. Customer profitability, why not? Even in supply review, what can we do to improve our throughput? What, you know, do we have contract manufacturers lined up if we need them? Do we have the right justifications for CapEx improvements in the plant? All that sort of stuff can help us drive growth on the supply side. Okay? I'll move on a little bit. Strategic topics. Ooh, God, you couldn't read that chart. All the slides are going to be on the website probably this weekend, so you can download those. If you go to the Next View Online section of the website, you can see all our stuff, all our conference presentations, including this one. I actually gave this talk last week in Hong Kong, and in June I gave it in Boston. The Boston one is on the website now, so it's 90% the same. But I'll put this one up as well. Okay, many topics. Quickly, some techniques to get sales on board because we need their input for the forecast, right? Make the process simple, communicate it, engage them in the development of the process. In terms of enabling IT, make it easy for them to input their, their data. Maybe it's a system that they're familiar with already. Don't enter, if they use Salesforce.com to manage their, as a CRM, well, Salesforce.com has gotten smart and said, okay, well, we need to put the forecast in here too, and they're developing forecast engines and so forth for that. Maybe just stick with a tool they know. History easily accessible for them. Okay, some things in the organization to get sales on board. Supply chain accountable for the process, demand manager. Sales accountable for the results. Remember that VP of sales is going to sign off on the demand plan like we talked about? Change management. Explain the big picture to them, how everything fits together, what their role is, what the implication of their decision is. With them. What's that? What's in it for me? Well, your customer is going to have the product when you want it. And we're all going to be competitive as a company. So we need to measure your forecast accuracy, you personally. So it's not personal, but we're just trying to help. Okay, balanced scorecard we talked about, and getting support from the top. An overall sponsor for SNOP, managing director, CFO, that type of person. Okay, we did a survey on what was the most effective thing in getting sales on board. Explaining the impact is what most people reported. Another big one was the use of metrics and providing a base forecasting. Don't go to them with a blank sheet. Go to them with saying, hey, here's what we think it is. Demand manager, do you have any changes to this? Easy for them. All right, I talked about sponsors. More and more CFOs are becoming involved in other things besides accounting and raising capital and capital structure. They're becoming more of a CEO's right-hand woman or man. This is a great sponsor for driving SNOP. Okay? And if it's not the sponsor, make sure this person's on board. We're going to need that for the financial integration piece anyway. Okay? All right. Do we want to use a little bit of...
Yes.
We can use a little bit of more presentation time, or do we want to start talking? A little more presentation time? We got a half hour. Right, what do you think? Is that going to be okay, my moderator? Okay.
Okay, no problem.
All right, I'm going to talk about a little bit about extending SNOP tier throughout the supply chain. Collaborative Planning, Forecast, and Replenishment, CPFR. It's been around for what, the 90s, I believe. So it's a set of collaborating principles with trading partners. Like, okay, Mr. Customer, tell us what your demand is. Okay, you know what, we're gonna stock inventory for you. We're gonna replenish the inventory when you need it. Or we're actually not gonna sell it to you. We're gonna keep it at your place, but we're gonna keep it on our books and we're not gonna sell it to you until you actually use it. Consigned inventory, these sort of things. Mostly happening in consumer products. Has anyone been involved in any CPFR projects? Lots of room for improvement. This is a good thing to get involved if you can do it. Okay, it's got benefits for both players. On the supplier side, once you kind of get this set up, it's harder for the customer to change. And it moves the focus away from just price, reducing expedite costs, and can lead to supply contracts if you're a supplier. Do this with one of your customers if you can. It's good for the customer. They get kind of a guaranteed supply and on-time supplier performance. Reduce lead times, better quality, or eliminate the need to inbound inspection. We just get rid of that. So this is a good thing. Okay, and what's been found is these sort of improvements in metrics and doing these sort of things. Increased forecast accuracy, increased revenue, improved on-time delivery, improved margins, all these sort of things. You know, it's all good stuff. You gotta have the right partner though. Like, you know, find a partner that, you know, you have about the same power position in the marketplace, you actually need each other. That's the type of partner to go with for this. Okay, social media, last topic. And this is more related to the demand input, right? So most applications right now are still in B2C, new product introductions. Yeah, pricing. You get some input on pricing. It gets really important. If it gets a lot of good, you know, lots of likes, for example, yeah, okay, we're gonna raise the price. I think B2B networks will follow. There'll be more kind of real-time collaboration between customer and supplier, order status, inventory levels, you know, this sort of thing. And, you know, as I say, it's still kind of mostly B2C. There's case studies about, I think it's Levi's, where if something's like really hot, they're actually putting messages out to their people in the stores and saying, like, you know what, we're getting a lot of good feedback on this article of clothing on social media. Put that stuff up front of the store and make sure when the customer comes in, you tell them about it, right? It sounds basic, but it's kind of real-time, you know, feedback from social media that's being used in this way. Or with respect to a competitor, if a competitor makes a mistake, or it's not good, then you can say stuff like, well, we don't do that. Or you can spy on your competitor's stuff and then copy it, right? So that's sort of things starting to go on as well. Hard to read, this chart. What it's meant to indicate is that there's a couple surveys here, some data that's showing that the use of social media is vastly increasing. So in 2013, pretty much nobody doing this, all the way in just 3 years, 41% of companies were using it in some way. Here's a set of questions that are specific questions related to how companies are using social media. Real-time feedback, product enhancement, advanced warning of supply disruptions, helping to forecast demand for hot products. And this is over the years, and between the period of 2012 and 2017, the percent of people that are using it in these ways is just increasing. Okay, and software is actually coming out to help us make some sense out of all this, like Facebook groups and messages and free text and this sort of stuff. People are watching, and software systems are now watching. So the idea, we hear terms like machine learning and AI and these sort of things. But what actually is happening is people are providing their input on social networks. Then you have bots or crawlers that are collecting this essentially text data. And depending on the words that are used in that text, you have machine learning algorithms that are picking up on that. And they're looking for the frequency of keywords like good or buy. And then based on the frequency of that, there's a variable, an index that's used to maybe increase or decrease a demand plan. And then that's being fed in. It's all really new, but some companies are starting to experiment with stuff like that. And here's some of the companies that are doing that. So Gatorade's using complaints of stockouts influence production. H&M, the clothing store, the volume of conversations after a celebrity endorses, whoa, Jennifer Lopez liked this, Okay, so we better do something about that. Or there's another company over here that was stealing some, they saw this rapper guy who was wearing this sweater, and they saw that video went viral, and they said, you know what, we're gonna make the same kind of sweater, right? So these type of things. Lego, Kmart, here's a bridal store that was using feedback from a virtual environment on their website and using that to predict their forecast and improving their forecast accuracy by 20%. So it's still very new, but companies are starting to do this. Mostly in the B2C. All this is B2C, right? And even this one, right? We know Elon Musk likes his Twitter account, right? I guess that's a form of social media too being used in business, okay? All right, so we talked about what S&OP is, we talked about growth topics, we talked about structuring your S&OP in a way that designs it for growth. We talked a little bit about CPFR, working with sales, social media, a few KPI suggestions for portfolio review. Anything else? Questions? S&OP being used in your companies? We're going to ask it again. Anyone?
Ada yang sudah memakai tools S&OP ini di perusahaan Anda?
One here.
Satu. Ada lagi yang lain?
So there's a huge opportunity then for you to start